Welcome to Washington Hospital Today, the program dedicated to sharing timely information about the community hospital that's been taking care of Washington Township Healthcare District residents since it opened in 1958. Washington Hospital Today is provided for the sole purpose of informing residents about healthcare topics and issues that have been covered during community forums, free health and wellness classes, or as part of educational sessions held during the district's open board meetings. This program is one more way that Washington Hospital helps empower you, the residents of the district, by providing information needed to make informed decisions about your health.
Today's presenter is Diana Jaycox. Diana Jaycox is a registered nurse. She is also a certified diabetes educator and has worked in diabetes education for over 3 decades. She spent 13 years of her career in the U.S. Army Nurse Corps, with service during the Vietnam era. During her time in the Army, Diana received her Bachelor's of Science and went on to earn her Master's in Nursing from San Francisco State University, with an emphasis on the clinical case management of patients with diabetes. Diana currently works with patients at Washington Hospital, providing education for those who have been admitted to the hospital and have a diagnosis of diabetes. She enjoys working with patients to set and achieve diabetes self-management goals.
Our topic today is one that we have not done before, and we decided that we would try and have a little fun with, and that is diabetes management in the 21st century. We wanted to take a look at internet resources and different sources of media information out there available for us to help us with our diabetes management. So how many of you are like me? You are still having your friends and grandkids and all of that program your smartphones. How many have Facebook accounts out there that you're on? Probably not that often, huh? Back in 1990 something another, I was interviewed by a company that was looking to do some computer work. Actually seeing patients online doing computer technology, and I told them back then it would never work because we were not going to have people having computers in every home. Little did I know that now everybody and their brother has a computer, and so it is not unusual to have all this technology available to you out there on the internet. And as it's been a great boon for a lot of us, it's been able to get information out to thousands of people that we might not have been able to reach in other normal circumstances. It also is a source of not so great information. And so one of the challenges that we see as diabetes professionals is trying to sort through the plethora of information that is out there, both in the internet, on television, available to you in magazine and print, all of that. How can you tell that what the information that you're getting is reliable or not? So one of the things that I wanted to do tonight was look at some methods for actually determining if a website or your internet or media information is actually reliable. How do we tell that what we're getting is actually usable and is not going to cause more harm for us? Okay. I'd also like to take us through some websites that we have found to be particularly helpful in providing diabetes information that you can actually use on a regular basis that may actually, you might find very helpful. Things like, where do I go to find recipes for low carbohydrate, low salt, good tasting food? What do I do if I am looking to lose weight? What about blood sugar monitoring and what is available out there for blood sugar monitoring? So just kind of wanted to take you through what I have found to be 8 steps to determining if your information is reliable or not. Okay? First and foremost, it has been suggested by those who are in the education field that when you are looking for information, that you look on sites that are established with institutions, as we note in our second comment here, sites that have expertise in the information that you are looking for. One of the things that I was told when I was going for my master's degree and I was beginning to learn this computer technology, you wouldn't take your car to your doctor to be fixed. And so when you are looking at a website, if you're looking for healthcare information, it should be a website or a magazine or media that is being put on. If it's healthcare information that you're looking for, then it should be a healthcare site. And that site should tell you that that's who they are connected with. Anybody out there ever been on this site? Checked it out? Seen what kind of information it has? Some of the key behaviors that we need in order to help manage our diabetes are listed on the other handout that I gave you, the keys to diabetes management. One of the things that I get asked the most questions about, as you can imagine, is what can I eat? Wasn't there a question about that already so far tonight? Okay. So one of the things that's kind of nice about the American Diabetes Association is that when you click on food and fitness, they take you to recipes. Let's see if we can find our pointer here. There's a recipe section. There's a very simple section on what can I eat, on planning meals, food advisors and cookbooks. All right. Also under that, if we're, as we always talk about, if we're going to be eating, we need to be eating to live. And one of the things that we eat for is to fuel our bodies, and therefore our bodies need to be taken out and put to work. And so there's always a balance. If we're going to balance out our blood sugars, we're going to balance them with the food we eat and our activity levels. So you'll notice in the same section on food, there's also a section on fitness. And they give you some great ideas for how to not only get out there and do some exercise, but how to help motivate yourself to do exercise. So all in all, this is a site that kind of gives you Diabetes 101 kind of management. Looking at their section on living with diabetes, there is information on this site about just general diabetes information, but even more importantly, I've seen that they break it down for information that isn't just for your children with diabetes, but you'll notice there's a section in there specifically for seniors. And there is also a section in here about coping with diabetes and even sections for caregivers. So overall, it's a site that has a lot of general information for you. Okay. What kind of questions do you all have about diabetes and food and management? No questions out there? Okay. How about being active? Do you know how much fitness or how much activity you need during the day to help control blood sugars? 30 minutes, okay. How can we get that 30 minutes? Does it always have to be that we go out and join the gym? Being able to think of some other things that might be helpful in terms of exercise. Walking is very good. Okay. Walking is probably the best. It's definitely the cheapest. We both have 2 legs we don't have to pay for. And we take them out and we move them. It's going to help balance out our blood sugars. Okay. But there's also a lot about these days about stretching and just in general moving your arms and legs. The National Diabetes Information Clearinghouse, or the NDIC. This is a site that is actually sponsored by the National Institutes of Health, and I don't know that you can see it way up there at the top of the page. But again, when we're looking for well-known institutions, the National Institutes of Health are definitely one of those. They have clearinghouse health information services online for not only diabetes information, but you'll notice up there there's kidney and urological diseases. There's weight control information, the National Diabetes Kidney Disease Education Program. And a newest one that has just come out, and I'm not sure I can find it on this page for you, but recently the National Institutes of Health have actually had a published site on the use of alternative medicine. And in that site, they actually take you through, you can click on any kind of alternative, like herbs or whatever that you're looking for, and they will tell you what kind of research has been done on that and what information they have about the pros and cons of the use of such forms. Recently, I read an article that says that about 90% of us with diabetes seek alternatives to, like we all talk about, are alternatives to using insulin, alternatives for weight loss, that kind of thing. It seems to be that with diabetes, we are more prone to be looking for things other than medications in order to help manage our diabetes. And because of that, it's very easy to get caught up in some information that is out there that may not be so helpful for you. Recently, I talked to a woman that was an inpatient with us who had recently read an article about the use of agave. How many of you have heard about using agave? Agave is sometimes used as a sugar substitute, and there's a lot out there on the internet and in different kinds of print journals and all that about the benefits of using agave. But what a lot of people don't know is that agave is essentially a fruit. And because of that, it's fruit sugar. And while it might be more natural than, say, using Splenda or NutraSweet or some of those other chemical artificial sweeteners, which are getting a lot of print these days, if you overuse agave, you're going to see a rise in your blood sugars that is not very good for you. And that was exactly what had happened to this woman. It started out as a teaspoon in her oatmeal and a teaspoon in her coffee, and a teaspoon here and a teaspoon there. We kind of call it in the business nickel and diming yourself. Before long, your teaspoons add up to almost a couple of servings of carbohydrates in a day. And for many people with diabetes, that might make the difference between a blood sugar that stays at goal and a blood sugar that is elevated. So we went to the site on alternative medicine and we looked up the research on agave. And in that whole site, there was this bit about talking about how it is actually a fruit sugar, and though it might be more natural for you, it might be a good idea if you have blood sugar problems to be very careful about how much you're using at one setting. Okay? So it's those kind of things that we have to be careful for. Okay, one of the other recommendations when you are looking for health information, it might be important to avoid what we call commercial sites. Those are sites that very simply, somebody's trying to sell you something. So they're going to definitely make sure that you believe that their product is the best product out there, which might mean it's a little on the biased side. Now, having said that, okay, I should also note down at the bottom here, this is actually a link that you can go to that will actually tell you on the website that you're on who is actually sponsoring it and whether or not they are essentially a legitimate seller of different types of diabetes products. Having said that we usually try and avoid commercial sites, I have found that there is times in which commercial sites can be very helpful to you. Can anybody guess what might be a helpful commercial site?
Diabetes Health Magazine.
Diabetes Health Magazine, exactly. That's a definitely good one. I would say the Diabetes Forecast is definitely a magazine that has a lot of advertisement in it. Certainly they want you to subscribe to it, but it also has a lot of very good information. Anything else? Just diabetes magazines. But Diabetes Forecast is one of the magazines that is out there. It's sponsored by the American Diabetic Association, and it is one of the magazines that is actually written for lay people. It has articles that are specifically designed for living with diabetes, and they're written in such a way that everybody can understand the information. One of the ones that I was thinking about was your meter sites for your blood sugar meters, and say your medication sites for like insulin medications. Lilly for Lilly insulins, Novo Nordisk for the Nova insulins. Almost every one of the diabetes product, the big product managers like Johnson & Johnson, who make the LifeScan meters, have a site that is all about diabetes. Granted, they're all about selling you a blood sugar meter. But even more importantly, they're about selling you the importance of monitoring and why you might want to monitor your blood sugars. So how many of you out there are monitoring your blood sugars at least once a day? Great. Okay. Anybody more than once a day? How often are you doing this, sir?
About half a dozen.
About half a dozen times a day? Okay. That's an awful lot of finger pokes.
Yep.
But the other thing is why are we doing blood sugar monitoring? What is it that blood sugar monitoring does for you besides cause your fingers to hurt? Let you know whether or not you're high or low. So if we're not looking at your blood sugars, we're kind of just guessing as to whether or not your diet is working for you, whether or not activity works for you. It's kind of like throwing darts with a blindfold on. So when we talk about blood sugar monitoring in our diabetes programs, one of the things that we talk about is not just monitoring per se and how to do it, but more importantly, what does this information actually tell you? And when is half a dozen times a day? What times of the day might be the most important to you in order to get information that you find usable? I tell people when I started as a diabetes educator way back too many years to count, my father was newly diagnosed with diabetes. And he was checking his blood sugars. He was one of the first blood sugar monitoring way back when the machines were about the size of my laptop computer, and it took you, at least 60, at least a minute. You had to wash off the blood. Anybody remember that? Washing the blood off and sticking the strip in. At any rate, he was doing that 4 times a day like his physician asked him to do. And the numbers were always in the high 200, 300s. And he kept doing it 4 times a day for about a year until finally he decided nobody was looking at it, and why was he doing this? And I came along and I thought, that's incredibly insane. Why do we poke our fingers 4 times a day and get blood sugars that never change, and nobody ever looks at them. And so I am a big advocate for making sure that if you're going to do monitoring, that those blood sugars are giving you information that you find usable, that actually speak to you, so that you can make decisions about your own management at home. And so programs, and even though we're on a commercial website, LifeScan and some of the other meter companies are also about what we call pattern management and actually learning to use the numbers. So that would be a time in which a commercial website might be an okay site for you to actually use. I just kind of wanted to look at domains and what they mean. I don't know about the rest of you, but when my daughter pointed this out to me, I thought this was extremely interesting. I have looked at things that have ended in .com for a long, long time and never realized that it meant that it was a commercial website. Or that I knew that .edu, because I had been involved in the school systems for so long, that meant that it was an education website, probably a school website. But that .org actually refers to nonprofit organizations. So sometimes just taking a look at the website, the end of where the suffix, say, on the website, can actually give you a lot of information as to who is actually the author and the institution or the owner, I guess, of the websites. And it can kind of give you an idea of the type of information that you might find. That's just an aside. One of the things, or the fourth thing that you want to look at, is making sure that you check the date. A reliable website will be updated fairly often. If you're on a website, you look down at the bottom of the page, and the dates at the bottom of the page date back to when I started in nursing. It might not be a site that's very helpful to you in terms of the latest and best in diabetes management. A lot has happened since Banting and Best discovered insulin back in the 1920s. And if we're looking for information that is the most up-to-date and the most helpful, we might want to make sure that the site has been updated recently. Now, how recently? That really depends on the information that you're looking at. You know, some things have not changed in the last 5 years. And that is usually a good rule of thumb when we're talking about healthcare management. Most of the time when I am looking at research and looking to see what information is out there that I can use and pass on to my patients, I'm trying to make sure that the information is not older than about 5 years. Okay? If the site seems old, it probably is a site that you want to steer clear of. Okay? Looking at how the site looks, there are a lot of people out there these days who are writing, it's all about blogging and starting your own web page and that kind of thing. Sometimes it's some amateur out there who's doing this for a hobby, who probably has no more information than, say, your next door neighbor. Okay? Is the site really cluttered and poorly designed? It should be something that you can easily manage to look for what you're looking for. And typically, my rule of thumb is that if you've got a whole bunch of advertisements and very little content, then it probably is a site that is not going to give you really reliable information. It's probably going to give you a bunch of opinions. Okay? So again, if the site seems amateurish, it probably is, and it's probably one that you want to avoid. So as a rule of thumb, I typically avoid people's personal blogs and stick to sites like we talked about, the American Diabetic Association, National Institutes of Health, that kind of thing. Another good rule of thumb is avoiding anonymous authors. If your website should have a page that tells you about, so you can actually click on it and look to see who is actually updating your site, who is contributing to your site, who the author is. If you can't figure it out from clicking on the about, another good way of knowing what's going on is if you can get the name of the author, you can Google the author these days and find out what their credentials are. One of the probably latest and best things that we have out there on the internet is ratings for your physicians. If you click on WebMD, you can actually look at certain physicians and their credentials. It will actually tell you where your physician graduated from, what he specializes in. And oftentimes there are websites out there connected to WebMD that will actually talk about how other patients rate that physician in terms of how well they're doing with diabetes management, for instance. The other thing that you'll notice is that good, reliable websites, okay, will refer to one another. They will link you up. So you'll be on an article, say, on the American Diabetic Association's website, and it will have an embedded colored, let me see if I can find one, colored link that when you click on it will take you to another reliable website. This may not be the best. But essentially you click on one and it takes you to another website. If you look at who it's being linked to, a reliable website, like I said, will link to other reliable sources, and they will refer to one another quite frequently. So, for instance, you would expect on the LifeScan site that they would quote things from the American Diabetic Association, that they would take you to the National Institutes of Health sites for different information. Finally, how does it all add up? What does this mean to you? Does this website or journal or print article that you're reading, does it have information that meets your needs? General health information that may not be appropriate for writing your college essays, as I point out to my college-age daughter, may be just fine for most of us who are just trying to find something to help us cope with daily life and living with diabetes. So, how many of you have computers at home? Spend any time on them? Yes. So I would suggest that you go ahead and take some time, and as a certain, fun kind of thing, look up under your Google search engine and just look for what information is actually out there on diabetes management. On those keys to diabetes self-management, those 7 behaviors you find there, if you put those keywords in on your search engine, you might be pleasantly surprised the type of information that might come up. So, questions?
I used to think that skipping a meal every now and then was a good idea to control your blood glucose, but it doesn't seem to work.
Yeah. Anybody know why that is? Sugar is your fuel. Sugar is your fuel source, which if we look at that article on LifeScan, that was one of the things that it points out. Your body is actually looking for sugar like your car looks for gas to run it. And so if you don't put sugar into the system, your body is going to put sugar in the system for you in order to keep it running. And consequently, there are places in your body that store sugar for future use. And when you skip a meal, your brain stimulates those body parts, i.e. your liver, your muscles, and especially muscles in your arms and legs, and fat cells, to put out stored sugar for you so you don't starve to death. Of course, some of us have a lot of stored sugar, and we would probably never starve to death. But our body doesn't know that. It's a leftover gene from way back in prehistoric caveman time, when we went through periods of starvation and then, periods of abundance of food. Our body tries to protect itself by making sure sugar is always available. It's a common misconception that a lot of people have, that you can control your diabetes mainly by, not eating. If I just don't eat all day, my blood sugars should come down. But it doesn't seem to work, because your body is going to put sugar in for you. Okay, when we're talking about the diabetes diet, we know that fruits turn 100% into sugar. And so it's kind of counterintuitive, if you're trying to control your blood sugars, that you eat willy-nilly of fruit all day long. However, one of the things that we have noticed is that if we serve fruit at the same time we're serving a mixture of other foods, and we are careful at the portion size of those fruits, we actually see a spike in your blood sugar, but it's not a big spike like you would normally see. So let's say that you drank a cup of orange juice versus eating a whole orange. We actually see, when we test people's blood sugars after they've done that, that when you drink orange juice, because the sugar from the fruit is already broken down, it gets into the bloodstream very quickly. On the other hand, if you're chewing an orange and the fiber from the orange, you will actually see a slow and steady increase in the blood sugar, which for many of you will allow your own body's insulin to catch up to the fruit and actually help it to break down. So if you're going to eat fruit, we're usually suggesting that it's 3 to 4 servings a day of fruit, but that it is with a meal. Or if you're going to eat it as a snack, that you don't eat it alone, that you put protein or something with it. So when you're looking at your divided plate, you will notice that we serve you foods that typically break down into sugar. They're called carbohydrates. So we'll serve you a certain amount of starch, we'll serve you fruit, and we'll serve you milk and yogurt. And again, we're putting that together with the protein and vegetables, and we find that we get a nice, slow, steady blood sugar increase.
What do you mean by starch?
Starch, like rice, potatoes, pasta, bread, almost any kind of wheat or grain product is a starch. Your body actually looks at those sugars the exact same way. Your body can't tell the difference between a piece of bread and the sugar that comes from it and a 60 jelly beans. They're the same as far as your body is concerned. However, the nutrition value of a piece of bread versus those 60 jelly beans is quite different.